Vika always dreamed of a real sea, a voyage that will take your breath away, and left behind a feeling as if time stood still for a few days for you. Not about those tedious ones bus travel in Europe, where every morning there is a new city. The alarm clock rings earlier than usual, endless transfers. My head is buzzing from audio guides and the eternal feeling that you didn't really manage to do anything look around. No, she imagined something completely different. A snow-white, majestic liner that smoothly cuts through the azure waves of the Mediterranean, leaving behind it a wide, foamy trail, pools on the upper decks where warm water splashes under bright sunshine, open restaurants with snow-white tablecloths and live flowers on the tables, exquisite treats whose names I could hardly pronounce it. And most importantly, evenings on the upper deck under an endless starry dome, when a light breeze gently plays with hair, and in a glass the bubbles are quietly ringing sparkling wine. But life, like this often happens, I contributed my own adjustments. With Alexei, they tied the knot immediately after graduating from university. Young, in love, convinced, what lies ahead for them is only a bright and limitless future. He was a beginner then. Programmer with burning eyes. She is yesterday's graduate of the Philological Faculty, which is already on. I knew for sure in my 5th year that her calling is teach literature to children. The wedding was lavish and cheerful. Then quite quickly, Misha appeared, and 4 days later years. Katya. Mortgage on 2-room apartment in residential area. Queue in kindergarten. Night tantrums. First school celebrations. Parent-teacher meetings. Mugs, colds, endless repair. All this gradually, imperceptibly, but inevitably, pushed her dream further and further away, and further, to where she already is, seemed almost childish and unrealizable. Vika loved immensely my family. Misha, now a 15-year-old boy with perpetually tousled bangs, followed in his father's footsteps. I spent days on the computer, delving into C++ and arguing in chats about what language programming is cooler. Katya, 11 years old dreamer with a light brown braid, painted with watercolors entire worlds, castles in the clouds, underwater cities for girls with wings. Vika was proud them to the depths of the soul, and yet, when she was sometimes late in front of the mirror in the bathroom, looking at his face no longer 25 but 40 years, fine wrinkles around the eyes, slightly visible folds at the mouth, inside it was rising a nagging feeling that life passes somewhere very close, but past her. Like those huge cruise ships that she sometimes saw through the porthole electric trains when I was traveling on Dacha, majestic, shining lights, going into the sunset and so distant. The anniversary has almost crept up unnoticed. At 40 years old, Vika was no longer expecting fireworks and surprises. I was getting ready for a typical evening, dinner at a modest Italian restaurant, a restaurant near home, perhaps a bouquet of peonies or roses. Alexei always chose exactly those shades that she likes, cake with a number 40 and warm words from children. She was sure that it was so, and it will be, calm, homely, usual. But on the morning of the anniversary that day, everything turned out differently. Alexei woke her up earlier, usual, a light kiss on the temple, the smell of his cologne, familiar and dear. "Get up, sunshine," he whispered with a sly, slightly guilty smile, from which Victoria always my heart sank. On the bedside there was a long white one on the nightstand envelope with golden sealing wax seal. Beautiful, dear, clearly not from the office store. Vika rose sleepily. On the elbow, took the envelope. She turned it over in her hands. "What's this?" "Open it," he said, and sat down. On the edge of the bed, watching her with barely concealed excitement. Inside lay a sheet of glossy paper. Vika. I ran my eyes over the first one's lines and froze. Certificate cruise. 7 nights on board luxury liner Odyssey. Route Barcelona, Rome, Athens, several other ports, which she had only read about in travel magazines. All inclusive, cabins with a balcony, meals in restaurants and excursions. And the most incredible thing is, not her alone, but with friends. Marina and Olga already knew. They were in cahoots from the very beginning. Victoria looked up at husband, eyes instantly filled with tears. "Lesha, are you serious? This is a fortune." He leaned over and hugged her tightly, like for the first time years of their marriage. "I paid absolutely everything. Cabins, food, drinks, even insurance and excursion. That's it. You've been here for so many years. I carried the house, the children, the school, all of us. You deserve at least a week when you can just breathe, laugh, and think about nothing, don't think." She burst into tears. Already for real? Quietly, gratefully, burying her face in his, on the shoulder. Tears were falling on his t-shirt, and he only ironed it on her back and repeated, "It doesn't matter how much it costs. What matters is that you smile." And there was such a look in his eyes, love, that Vika, for a moment, I forgot about all the accumulated in recent months, small omissions, fatigue, his late returns from work. All of this suddenly became unimportant. It was just her, him, and an incredible gift that turned her world upside down. The next 2 weeks turned into a joyful one vanity. Vika was running around the shopping centers, tried on the Lungs chiffon dresses of all shades of the sunset sky, bright swimsuits, wide-brimmed straw hats, sandals on thin straps. I bought a small evening dress, a handbag decorated with diamonds, a crumb that I never allowed myself to do that before. Anyway, chatting with friends. It was a real holiday. Marina, always cheerful and noisy journalist, sent by 10 photographs of cocktails per day and entire lists necessary means. From the sun after sunbathing and mosquito repellent. Olga, as always, calm, and collected, brought order. Reminded about foreign passports, health insurance rules, carrying liquids and hand luggage. Put it away. I recommended downloading it. Offline maps, take a power bank, more helpful, refresh your knowledge English, and buy Russian-Spanish phrasebook. "This will be our real, a girl's adventure," she wrote. Marina abandoning the chat hearts, palm trees, and champagne. No husbands, no children, no school and reports. Just us, the sea, wine, and crazy talk until the morning. Vika read these messages and smiled like that so wide that the cheeks began wine. For the first time in many years, she felt not just mother, wife, and teacher, and a woman who can dream. That can be allow yourself luxury, to be selfish for a whole week. And it felt so sweet, so alive that I almost physically felt it. How they straighten out inside wings that she had long ago, I forgot to straighten it out. Alexei helped pack suitcases, joked that he was jealous, but was actually glad. He knew how Vika got tired of school, everyday life, and household chores. "Come back rested and we will go somewhere together. The two of us," he promised, kissing goodbye at the airport before departure to Barcelona. The Odyssey airliner surpassed all expectations. When Vika stepped on board and was overcome with excitement, a fairy tale feeling. Decks shone with whiteness. The air was infused with salt and aroma, freshly baked goods from the buffet. The cabins are spacious, with large portholes, soft beds, and a minibar. The girlfriends squealed with delight, unpacking things. "Look, there's even a jacuzzi on the balcony," Olga exclaimed. In the evening after the welcome cocktail, they rose from the captain to the upper deck. Sun set over the horizon, coloring sky in shades of pink and orange. Vika stood at the side, holding a glass in his hand, champagne, sparkling cold with bubbles dancing on the surface. The wind ruffled her hair, dress developed like a sail. I felt absolutely happy. "Girls, here's to us for this life, which sometimes gives miracles," she said. She made a toast and they clinked glasses, laughing. At that moment, everyone the problems seemed far away. School notebooks, quarrels, children because of gadgets, even recent misunderstandings with Alexei regarding his late returning from work. Here, on the liner, she was free, young, full of energy. "I love you, Lesha," she thought, looking at the sunset, and sent him a selfie with his girlfriends. But the idyll didn't last long. After dinner, when they returned to the cabin, telephone Victoria squeaked. Message from an unknown number. The text was laconic and strange. "Don't board the plane. Urgently. Go to the airport. Do it yourself. You will understand. Flight SU 1234, departure at 22:20 from Barcelona to Moscow." Vika, just for a few seconds, I looked at these lines as if I hoped they would disappear or turn into spam advertising casino. Then she blinked, as if trying to shake off the obsession. "What nonsense," she muttered. She said out loud, more to herself than to her friends. Marina, who had already filmed shoes, she immediately jumped up, leaned over her shoulder. Olga moved closer too, frowning. "Who is this?" "A joke." "What kind?" Marina asked, squinting at the screen. "Show me completely," Vika said. "Phone." Marina read it. Out loud, theatrically rounding off eyes. "You'll understand everything yourself. Write a cheap thriller script. Who's so dramatic?" Vika tried to be cheerful smile, but only came out a nervous, crooked smile. "Probably spam or a prank. Lesha sometimes likes to tease me, but that's not his style at all, and the number is unfamiliar." He would wrote from his own. I tried to call the number. The subscriber was unavailable. Stupidity. Some. We're already on board. The liner leaves in a few hours. How will I get to the airport? Olga, as always the best reasonable, shrugged her shoulders. Maybe someone really did confuse the recipient, or a former classmate decided make a stupid joke. Although it's strange, of course, why exactly "don't sit down" on the liner? We're already on board. Vika nodded, but inside something vague stirred anxiety. "Okay, forget it. Let's order dessert instead." To the room. I saw tart on the menu, with raspberries and creme brulee, and more wine, white, cold, she suggested, trying drive away the thoughts. But the message, I couldn't get it out of my head. Why? Airport? Why Moscow? And this, "You'll understand everything yourself." It really sounded like from a bad thriller. I wrote to Alexei and received strange SMS. "You didn't say anything, you know?" The answer came quickly. "No, honey. Probably scammers. Enjoy your vacation. Love." Vika exhaled, deciding that it's really a joke. But half an hour later, she's back looked at the phone. Is this not a joke? The thought was absurd but tenacious. Vetch stood on the balcony of the cabin, leaning his elbows on the railing. The liner was about to depart. From Barcelona in the evening. Wind it got cooler, but Vika I didn't notice. There was a struggle inside her. Two sensations. Warm, almost childish happiness from the fact that she's finally here, and thin, a subtle anxiety that brought that stupid message. She opened the phone again. The message was still there. The same letters, the same unknown number. Vika scrolled through it up and down as if from this the text may have changed or explain yourself. "Don't sit down. Get on the liner immediately to the airport. You'll figure it out yourself. Flight SU 1234, departing at 10:20 p.m. from Barcelona to Moscow." The time on the screen was showing 20:47. Before the scheduled departure, there was more than an hour left. Vika snorted, trying brush the thought aside, but the fingers opened by themselves airline website. Flight really existed. Barcelona, Moscow. Departure at 10:20 p.m. Aeroflot plane. Vika closed the tab, feeling as my cheeks begin to burn from irritation with myself. Am I seriously checking this? Some anonymous letter? Marina went out onto the balcony with 2 glasses martini. "What are you doing?" "Pensive?" "We agreed. No husbands, no children, no problem." "Yes, everything." Vika waved her hand. "That's it. Fine. It's just weird I can't get the SMS out of my head. It doesn't work." Marina took it away. Phone, read it, and burst out laughing. "Oh, come on, this is classic genre. Someone decided to play a prank on you, maybe one of your students." The high school students are fed up with your number and decided to have fun, and now they're laughing and sitting there. I don't have my number, she muttered. Vika. Then a former classmate or a colleague who is jealous that you're on a cruise and he's at school checks the essay. Forget it. Olga joined them, wrapped in a light cardigan. To be honest, I would too. Now I didn't even go to the airport. If only there were mountains of gold there. We've only just begun. The day after tomorrow. Already Italy, then Greece. Victoria nodded. They were. You're right. It was all true. And yet something still lingered. Not even fear, more like some kind of vague, almost physical, the feeling that someone is watching at her from the darkness. She wrote to Alexei once again. You are definitely... Don't you know anything about this message? It looks very strange. The answer came almost instantly. Vika, darling, relax. I'm sitting at home. Misha is playing his PlayStation. Katya is drawing. Everything is calm. If you want, you can call to the Barcelona police and report about a suspicious SMS, but this is the same nonsense. Do you agree? I love you. Rest, Vika smiled, corner of his lips. His calm, a slightly ironic tone always had a calming effect on her. She sent a heart and put it away, phone in the purse. But still, in a few minutes when girlfriends, we've already discussed whether to go to pool party or book more wine in the cabin, Vika suddenly I caught myself looking on the clock. 21:50. Before departure, there was very little time left. El Prat Airport was at about 25 minutes by taxi if there will be no traffic jams. I'm going crazy, she thought, and yet soon she heard her own voice. Girls, I'll probably go to the airport. Marina choked. Wine. Are you serious? I'll quickly. I'll see what's there and come back. The liner is staying until midnight. At the port, right? I'll make it. Olga looked at her with anxiety. Vika, this is absurd. You understand that it could be someone's evil a joke? I understand. But if I won't go, then I'll be there all week. Think about it. I need to see that there is nothing there. Then I will calm down. Girlfriends. They exchanged glances. Marina sighed. Okay, you and I. No, Vika said sharply. You stay. It's my thing. I'll do it myself. Taxi, I'll call you right now. I quickly assembled the small one I threw on a light handbag, put a sweater over her dress, and ran out from the cabin. On leaving the liner, the information desk was still open. Vika explained that she needed urgent help. I need to go to the airport, and in 3 I had been sitting in black for a few minutes already. Mercedes taxi. Road. It flew by like a fog. Vika. I looked out the window, but I saw only my reflection and blinking numbers on the phone. 2138, 2145, 2152. My heart was pounding so hard as if she was running, not driving. She tried to convince herself that all this is nonsense, that he'll see an empty terminal and laugh over herself and return to her friends with the history they will have remember for years. Taxi stopped at Terminal T1 exactly at 10:01 p.m. Vika paid. She jumped out and ran to the entrance. It was crowded inside despite the late hour. Tourists, business travelers, families with children. She rushed to the departures board. SU-1234, Barcelona, Moscow. Departure 2220. Status, in progress. Final check. Vika froze. Her flight was already closed. She was late. And at that moment, I realized that I had arrived after all, not in vain, because I saw something that instantly made my mouth was dry. Behind the glass wall in the duty-free zone, right opposite the boarding gate to the flight, Alexei stood. In that, the darkest blue shirt, which she gave him for New Year's. He held onto hand of a young woman, years old 30, long dark hair, a bright dress, a laughing face. They stood close. Tu Bliboko. He leaned towards her, said something in her ear, and she laughed, throwing her head back. And then he kissed her lightly, habitually, like kissing a person, with whom this happens not for the first time. Vika felt as the floor disappears from under my feet. The air became thick, hot, impossible to breathe. She grabbed the information desk so as not to fall. In the ears, it rang. Someone nearby asked, "In English, is everything okay?" But she didn't answer, only watched as her husband, a man with whom she lived almost 20 years, raising children, made plans, hugs another woman and goes with her to the boarding gate. Vika stood in the middle of the terminal, holding on to the cold metal handrail as if he could keep her from falling into some bottomless abyss. The roar of airplanes, announcements in Spanish, English, and French, hundreds of steps people. All this turned into white noise, in which one could hear only the beating of her own hearts. It was beating so hard that seemed about to burst out from the chest. She saw how Alexei and that woman disappeared outside the boarding gate. Their silhouettes, his broad shoulders, her light gait. A few more seconds loomed in the glass corridor, and then disappeared finally. They flew away together. Vika slowly slid down the wall. On the floor, knees buckled themselves. Someone passing by passengers asked, "Signora, are you feeling unwell?" She didn't answer. She just stared at one point to where he had just stood her husband. How long did she sit there? So, a minute, 5, 10, she didn't know. At some point, she squatted down nearby a woman in airport uniform. The service asked in English, "Madam, are you feeling unwell? Need a doctor?" Vika shook her head. Voices returned slowly, like from under the water. "No, I'm fine. Thank you," she replied. She struggled to find the words. She forced herself to stand up. Her legs were shaking. In her head, the same question kept coming back, stupid and endless. How? How is this possible? How could he send it at the same time on a dream cruise and then fly off to Barcelona for another woman? Why? Why even bother? This gift? So that she doesn't interfere, so that she was far away. She took out her phone. Fingers. They weren't listening. The screen was blurry. I opened a chat with Alexei. His last message, "I love you. Get some rest." Sent at 21:47. At the moment when she was already driving to the airport, Vika opened keyboard. I wanted to write something furious, short, tearing, but instead I typed only one word, "Why?" And she sent it. There was no answer. The plane was already in the air. The connection was cut off. She imagined him sitting in a chair, holding his companion by the hand, looking out the porthole, and thinks, about what? About her. About children, or about nothing at all because he doesn't care anymore. She went outside. Night, the air in Barcelona was warm, smelled of wine and taxi exhaust. Vika stood on the sidewalk, not knowing where to go. Liner, girlfriends are waiting. But the thought of that, to get back to where a few hours ago I stood with champagne and felt she seemed like the queen of the world, unbearable. The phone vibrated. "Marina, Vic, where are you? We're worried." "Everything's fine." Victoria looked at the message and suddenly she began to cry. Without sobs, quietly, just tears flowed down her cheeks and dripped onto the screen. She sent a voice message. "Girls, I saw Lesha at the airport. On the other hand, they flew to Moscow." Sent. 10 seconds later, the phone literally exploded. Calls, messages, voicemails. "Marina." She screamed into the phone. "Vika, where are you? Now, stay put, we're moving. Follow you. Name the terminal." "T1, departure area," she whispered. "Vika." She sat down on the curb. She hugged her knees with her hands. Thoughts were running through her head. The last few months, as if someone was quickly flipping through the album photographs backwards. His late return from work. "The project is on fire, Vic. We need to finish it." His sudden generosity with the cruise. "You've been carrying it all on yourself for so many years. Deserved." His tenderness before departure. Almost guilty. His calm answers to hers messages about a strange SMS. Someone warned her. Someone knew, and this someone tried, save her. She decided that it was joke. In 25 minutes near her, it suddenly stopped taxi. Marina jumped out of it. And Olga. Marina rushed to Vika, hugged her so tightly that Olga took my breath away, sat down next to her and stroked her back, silently without unnecessary words. "Let's go back," he said quietly, said Olga. "To the ship. At least it's safe there. There, we're with you." Vika shook her head. "I can't. Go back there. Everything is there. There. It was all about happiness, and now—" "Then let's go to the hotel," Marina decided. "Let's rent a room in the city. We'll be there right now. Sit, drink, cry, swear, anything. But you won't be alone." Vika allowed herself to be lifted. Her legs were still shaking, but her friends held her from both sides. They got into a taxi. Vika watched out the window onto night Barcelona, lights, palm trees, laughing people on the sidewalks, and thought that all this now belongs another world. The world where I was also a wife, a mother, a woman, the one they love, not the one who just found out that her life in the last months, or maybe in years, was a decoration. They rented a room at the hotel for 3. Expensive, with a view at sea. The irony of fate. Vika collapsed on the bed without undressing. Marina brought a bottle of wine from the minibar, poured into plastic cups. Olga dimmed the lights, leaving only a dim glow in the bathroom so as not to blind her eyes. "Tell me," Marina asked, sitting closer, "everything you saw." Victoria, barely keeping her voice from shaking, recounted every detail. How he leaned toward the stranger, how she laughed loudly, how their fingers intertwined. When her story ended, an oppressive silence fell over the room, broken only by the barely audible whisper of the air conditioner and the distant hum of the evening city. "Who sent you that message?" Olga finally broke the silence. Vika shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe she herself? Or one of his colleagues, someone who wanted to warn him." Marina clenched her fists. "I'll call him as soon as he lands." "No, that's not necessary," Vika stopped her. "Not now. I'm not ready to hear his voice yet, not ready for his explanations." She lay down, curled up, as if trying to hide from the world. The 2 friends lay down on either side of her, as they had done as children when they spent the night at each other's houses. Vika closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, the same piercing image kept appearing before her mind's eye. Alexei and the woman walking toward the boarding gate, his back, so familiar and achingly familiar, receding from hers, seemingly forever. The morning arrived gray and heavy. Vika woke up in an unfamiliar hotel room with the unpleasant taste of last night's wine on her tongue and the feeling as if part of her heart had been ripped out of her chest. Marina was still asleep in the next bed, covered up to her chin. Olga was already sitting by the window, holding her phone and a cup of coffee she'd bought from the vending machine in the hallway. "Good morning," Olga said quietly, noticing Vika's eyes open. Vika didn't answer, but sat up slowly, hugging her knees, feeling a dull ache throughout her body. "The ship has already departed," Olga continued. "We informed the captain yesterday that we had to disembark due to family circumstances. They were very understanding. Your bags and ours have already been delivered to the port, to the storage locker. We can pick them up whenever it's convenient for you." Victoria nodded mechanically. She couldn't care less where her suitcases were, where the ship was, or where, for that matter, the world was. Marina woke up, stretched, and then, remembering yesterday, sat up abruptly. "He answered," she said. Vika shook her head. The phone had been silent since she sent her last message. Why? The plane landed at Sheremetyevo around 4 a.m. Moscow time. More than 5 hours had passed. Alexei could have answered 1,000 times, but he didn't. "I tried calling him last night," Marina admitted, "but he doesn't answer. The phone is off." "Maybe he's still asleep," Olga suggested uncertainly. "Or he threw the phone in the toilet," Marina added venomously, "along with his conscience." Vika stood up and went to the mirror. Her face was puffy, her eyes were red, her hair was tangled. She didn't recognize herself. The woman with the glass of champagne on the deck now seemed like a character in some alien film, unrelated to her. "I want to know who she is," Victoria suddenly said. Her voice was hoarse but firm. "How long has this been going on?" Olga and Marina exchanged glances. "Then we need to go home," Olga said. "There's the next flight today." Vika nodded. "Yes, home." They bought tickets for the evening flight. There were no other available seats. The rest of the day passed in a strange daze. They went to the port, picked up their things, and had lunch at a small cafe by the sea. Almost no one ate, though. Vika looked at the water and thought that just 24 hours ago she had believed her life was wonderful. On the plane, she sat by the window. Her friends were nearby. No one talked about trivial matters. Only once did Marina quietly ask, "What will you do when you see him?" Vika was silent for a long time. "I don't know. First I'll look him in the eyes, and then I'll decide." They landed in Moscow after midnight. A taxi home, 40 minutes of complete silence. The entrance greeted them with the familiar smell of damp and paint on the ground floor, the elevator, the keys in the lock. The door opened silently. The apartment was dark, the children were gone. He must have sent them to their grandmother's. Alexei was sleeping on the sofa in the living room, fully dressed, having removed only his jacket. 2 glasses of half-finished wine and an empty bottle sat on the coffee table. One of the glasses had a trace of bright lipstick. Vika recognized the shade, the same one that had been on the woman's lips at duty free. She didn't wake him, simply went into the kitchen, poured a glass of water, sat at the table, and waited. He woke up around 4 in the morning, turned on the light, saw her, and froze. "Vika, you're supposed to be at sea." "I was at sea," she answered calmly. "And then I was at the airport. I saw you with her." Alexei sank onto the sofa. "Or that you were rehearsing some scene, or that you were rehearsing some scene from a play." He lowered his head. I didn't want you to find out like this." "What did you expect? For me to come back in a week and see an empty closet or a note on the refrigerator?" There was silence. Long. Oppressive. "How long?" Vika asked. "Almost a year," he answered quietly. "Her name is Ksenia. She's the new project manager. We worked a lot together. Then it became more than work." Vika nodded, as if that explained everything. "What about the cruise? I wanted to give you something nice. Before—" He hesitated. "Before I told you. I thought you'd rest, come back happy, and then I could." Honestly," she repeated, as if tasting the word. "You bought me a cruise to make it easier for you to cheat. That's what they call it now, honestly." He didn't answer. "Who wrote to me?" she asked suddenly. Alexei looked up. "Ksenia, probably. She found out about the cruise and was against it. She said it was mean, that you had a right to know the truth before we flew away together. I tried to talk her out of it, but she probably wrote anyway." Vika closed her eyes. So the mistress turned out to be more honest than her husband. "Go away," she said. "Pack your things and go right now." "We'll tell the children, tomorrow together, but you shouldn't be here." Alexei stood up. He looked at her for a long time, as if he wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. Then he silently went into the bedroom, picked up his gym bag, and packed the essentials. Vika didn't help or interfere. She just watched. When the door closed behind him, she went to the window. Moscow was asleep. Victoria pressed her forehead to the glass and finally burst into tears. No longer quietly, but chokingly, like a child who had been robbed of everything he believed in. She didn't know what would happen tomorrow, how she would explain to the children, how she would live, how she would stop loving the man she had loved for almost 20 years. But at that moment in the empty apartment, she felt a strange, bitter freedom for the first time. She no longer waited for a miracle on the deck of the liner. She stood on her shore and began a new life, without champagne, without sunsets, but with the truth.